You reach back into your timeline for a specific year, a specific month, or even an entire era of your life, and you find that there is nothing there. It is not the soft, fuzzy edge of normal forgetfulness, where details fade like old photographs left in the sun. This is different. This is a clean cut. It is a sheer drop where a bridge should be. You sit in a conversation and someone brings up a shared event from 5 years ago. They describe the room, the weather, the argument, the resolution. You nod. You smile. You mimic the facial expressions of recognition because you have learned that social survival depends on continuity. But internally, your stomach drops. You do not remember the room. You do not remember the argument. You are listening to a story about a stranger who happens to wear your name. There is a specific somatic texture to this absence. When you try to force the memory, you don't find fragments. You encounter a wall of static. A subtle nausea rises in the throat. The nervous system sends a very quiet, very sharp signal. Stop looking. It feels less like a failure of retrieval and more like a restricted zone. You are not losing your keys. You are losing the narrative of who you have been. Most people experience their lives as a continuous stream, a river flowing from childhood to the present. You experience yours as an archipelago, isolated islands of clarity separated by vast, dark oceans of lost time. You have learned to leap between these islands, to construct a plausible story to fill the gaps, but the anxiety remains. You wonder why your own mind has decided that you are not allowed to know your own history. There is a reason the lights were turned off in those rooms, and you are beginning to suspect that the darkness is not an accident. From the outside, this structural absence is almost always miscoded. To your friends, your family, and your partners, these gaps look like indifference. You are frequently accused of not listening, of checking out, or of simply not caring enough to retain the details of their lives. You hear phrases like, "I told you this 3 times," or "How can you possibly forget that? We were all there." They interpret your blank stare as a lack of investment. They assume that memory is a function of effort, that if you truly valued the moment, you would have held on to it. Because they cannot see the wall of static, they label you as flighty, scatterbrained, or absent-minded. In professional settings, this perception hardens into judgments about your competence. You are viewed as disorganized or unreliable, someone who needs everything written down in an email because verbal instructions evaporate the moment they touch your ears. You likely find yourself apologizing constantly. You apologize for your brain's refusal to cooperate. You apologize for the holes in the timeline. You accept the label of having a bad memory because it is the socially acceptable shorthand for a much more terrifying reality. You become an expert at the social nod. You learn to smile vaguely when people reference past events, using context clues to triangulate what you should be feeling in that moment. You become a detective in your own life, piecing together your history from the casual remarks of others. But this mimicry comes with a distinct type of loneliness. You are performing the role of a person with a continuous history, while internally you feel like a fraud. You are not merely forgetting details. You are losing the connective tissue that makes relationships feel real. They think you are merely distracted by the present. They do not realize that you are paying a steep physiological tax just to appear as though you are inhabiting the same timeline as everyone else. This internal erosion is not loud. It is the quiet, relentless hum of a processor running at maximum capacity just to maintain a static image. You live in a state of chronic, low-grade archival anxiety. Because you cannot trust your biological hard drive, you have likely become a hoarder of external evidence. You do not take photographs to capture beauty. You take them to create proof. You save text messages, keep journals you rarely read, or accumulate physical tokens of events, terrified that if you let go of the object, the experience itself will evaporate into the ether. This constant externalization of memory leaves you internally depleted. While others rely on an automatic autobiography to ground them, you must manually reconstruct your identity every morning. There is a specific type of fatigue that sets in around mid-afternoon, a cognitive heaviness that coffee cannot touch. It is the exhaustion of a brain that is constantly cross-referencing, fact-checking, and simulating a continuous reality that it does not actually possess. You are doing the manual labour of consciousness. Over time, this vigilance creates a pervasive sense of unreality. You may find yourself in the middle of a significant life event, a wedding, a funeral, a promotion, and feel a sudden, terrifying detachment. You wonder in real time if you will remember this moment in a year. You are watching yourself live rather than inhabiting the experience, pre-grieving the loss of the memory before the moment has even ended. This detachment is often mistaken for calm or resilience, but it is actually a defensive numbness. The cost accumulates in the body. You likely carry tension in the jaw and the pelvic floor, the somatic holding patterns of someone bracing for impact. You feel a deep, unshakable sense that you are porous, that time flows through you rather than accumulating within you. You look at others who can casually recall their third-grade teacher or a vacation from a decade ago, with a mix of envy and suspicion. The mental energy required to hide your gaps leaves little left for ambition or deep connection. You are surviving your timeline, not building on it. And as the fatigue deepens, you begin to realize that this energy drain is not a malfunction of the system. It is the bill coming due for a very expensive service your brain is providing. The missing time is not a deletion, it is a quarantine. To understand why your timeline is fragmented, you must look at the mechanical relationship between the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, and the hippocampus, the organ responsible for time-stamping memories and placing them into a narrative context. Under normal conditions, you experience an event, your hippocampus tags it with a time and a place, and it gets filed away as history. You can recall it because it has been processed and neutralized. It is a book on a shelf. But when the nervous system detects a threat that exceeds its capacity to process, whether that is an acute shock or a chronic, unbearable environment, the biological priority shifts instantly from archival to survival. In these states of overwhelm, the brain is flooded with stress hormones like cortisol, which effectively shut down the hippocampus. The librarian leaves the building. The recording equipment is turned off. The brain determines that recording the details of the horror is less important than mobilizing energy to survive it. Consequently, the sensory data of that time, the sights, the sounds, the feelings, are not encoded as an explicit autobiographical memory. They do not get turned into a story. They remain raw, unprocessed data scattered across the body and the lower brain regions. This is what creates the gap. The timeline was cut because the machinery required to knit it together was taken offline to conserve energy for defense. The gap is actually a blast wall. Your brain decided that allowing you to fully remember and integrate those experiences would have shattered your ability to function in the moment. The numbness, the fog, the static, these are not failures of your mind. They are successful deployments of a neurological airbag. You have huge gaps in your memory because, at some point, your system decided that knowing was incompatible with continuing. It sacrificed your history to preserve your functioning. You are walking around with redacted files because your internal security system determined that you did not have the security clearance to view your own life without collapsing. But this mechanism, designed for extreme peril, creates a paradoxical haunting. If the memory was never properly filed away as past, where does it live now? And if the danger is over, why is the librarian still refusing to return to work? This is not a cognitive deficit, it is a survival tax. You are not a person with a broken memory, you are a person whose internal threat detection system has been granted administrative privileges over your autobiography. This is not brain fog, it is a highly successful, albeit aggressive, partition strategy. You identify as forgetful, scatterbrained, or damaged, but your nervous system identifies you simply as a survivor of an environment that required selective blindness. The gaps in your timeline are not holes, they are blast shields. Your brain did not lose the data, It classified the data as too radioactive to be handled by your conscious mind. You are looking for a malfunction, but you are staring at a feature. The system worked exactly as it was designed to work in a high-threat environment. It kept the machine running by dumping the cargo. Reframing this shifts the narrative from incompetence to adaptation. You are not failing to hold on to memories, you are succeeding at repelling them. Every time you hit that wall of static, you are encountering a boundary that was erected to keep you safe. The you that navigates the world today is the result of a bargain made in the dark. You traded continuity for functionality. You sacrificed the ability to know your story so that you could continue to live it. But this protection comes with a profound alienation. By saving the organism, the mechanism has fractured the self. You are safe from the past, yes, but you are also exiled from it. You are the sole survivor of a history you are not allowed to read. The mechanism kept you alive, but in doing so, it has made you a stranger in your own house, left to wonder if the person who lived through those missing years was really you at all. The tragedy of this mechanism is not that it happened once. The tragedy is that it never turned off. The blast shields were lowered to protect you from a specific era of your life, but the sensors that control those shields remain calibrated to an extreme sensitivity. Your brain learned that the safest way to handle intensity is to delete it. Consequently, this survival strategy has migrated from the past into your present, creating a repeating pattern where you are continuously losing your grip on your own life in real time. You see this most clearly in your relationships. When conflict arises, when voices are raised or the emotional temperature spikes, your system does not engage, it evacuates. You might physically remain in the room, maintaining eye contact, perhaps even nodding, but the recording device has stopped. 2 hours later, when the dust settles, you cannot recall what was said. You remember the feeling of danger, the somatic constriction in your chest, but the content of the conversation is gone. This makes you dangerously pliable. Because you have no transcript of the event, you are forced to accept the other person's version of reality. If they say, "You agreed to this," or "I never said that," you have no internal evidence to dispute them. You surrender your reality because you cannot find the file. Over time, this erodes your trust in your own perception. You become the partner who always apologizes, not because you are wrong, but because you are the one without the data. You assume the liability of the relationship's friction because you are the one with the holes in the tape. You are not compromising, you are being overwritten. This pattern bleeds into your professional life, creating a covert layer of exhaustion. You likely operate with a deep-seated imposter syndrome, but yours is rooted in a neurological reality. You feel as though you are not accumulating expertise, but rather frantically relearning your job every week. While your peers seem to build a tower of cumulative knowledge, stacking experience on top of experience, you feel like you are constantly relaying the foundation. When high-pressure projects arrive, the stress triggers the old mechanism. The librarian leaves the desk. You find yourself staring at spreadsheets or emails that you wrote yourself, feeling no recognition of the authorship. You have to reverse engineer your own work. This forces you to become hyper-conscientious, obsessive about notes, lists, and paper trails. You are not organized by nature, you are organized by necessity. You are terrified that if you drop the ball, you won't just lose the project, you will lose the continuity of your professional identity. You work twice as hard as your colleagues just to maintain the appearance of the same baseline competence, burning out in cycles because you are manually holding onto information that others retain automatically. Perhaps the most damaging context, however, is your relationship with your own growth. Because the mechanism deletes pain, it also deletes the lesson. You find yourself repeating the same mistakes, dating the same type of person, or falling into the same behavioral loops, not because you are stupid, but because the memory of the previous consequence was redacted. You do not have the visceral, gut-level memory of the last crash to warn you away from this one. You remember that it happened intellectually, the way one remembers a historical fact, but you do not feel it. The pain was scrubbed to keep you functional. Without the scar tissue of memory to guide you, you are doomed to touch the hot stove again and again. You are trapped in a tactical now, reacting to immediate stimuli without the strategic wisdom of your own history. You are not building a life. You are effectively living the same year over and over, wondering why the scenery never changes, unaware that your internal navigation system is erasing the map as you walk. The ultimate cost of this survival strategy is that it functions as a blunt instrument. Your nervous system does not have a scalpel, it has a sledgehammer. When it learned to sever the connection to your memory to protect you from pain, it did not learn to discriminate between the terror of trauma and the intensity of joy. It simply learned to cut the feed whenever the signal became too loud. You cannot selectively numb. The mechanism that deletes the argument also deletes the reconciliation. The dissociation that protects you from heartbreak also insulates you from love. You likely find that your positive memories are just as fragmented as your negative ones. You know you went on that trip. You know you stood at that altar. You know you held your child. But you cannot access the visceral texture of the joy. You have the facts, but you do not have the feeling. You are watching your best moments through a sheet of thick, frosted glass. This creates a pervasive sense of hollowness. You are technically safe, but you are living in a narrow emotional frequency band, a grey zone where nothing is allowed to pierce the armour. You have purchased your stability at the cost of your vitality. You exist in a state of chronic preservation, keeping the lights on but never allowing the house to get warm. You see others being moved by art, by connection, by nostalgia, and you feel a strange, cold distance, as if you are a distinct species that does not run on the same fuel. Furthermore, because you cannot hold on to your history, you lose the compounding interest of your own identity. Wisdom is not just intelligence, it is intelligence integrated with memory. It is the accumulation of lessons, patterns, and self-knowledge over time. Without that accumulation, you feel perpetually young in a way that is not refreshing but terrifying. You feel unanchored, drifting without the ballast of your past to steady you against the waves of the present. You are not growing, you are merely continuing. You have survived the threat, yes, the blast shields held, but you are now trapped inside the bunker you built to save yourself. The air is stale, the light is artificial, and the silence is deafening. You kept the bad things out, but you also kept the rest of your life from getting in. You are realizing that the safety you fought so hard for feels suspiciously like a cage, and the price of not feeling the pain is that you no longer feel the person who survived it. There is no cinematic climax here. There is no sudden flood of recovered footage that washes the timeline clean. The brain does not relinquish its security protocols simply because you have intellectually understood them. The walls you encounter were built with the strongest materials your biology could manufacture: cortisol, adrenaline, dissociation, and they will not crumble just because you have named them. You are left, instead, with a quiet, uneasy negotiation. You stand at the edge of the gap, looking into the dark water, and for the first time, you stop trying to frantically fill it with noise. You stop apologizing for the bridge that isn't there. You acknowledge that the silence is not an emptiness, but a heavy, silent monument to what it took to keep you here. The static is not a glitch. It is the sound of your system holding the line. The question that settles in the chest is not, how do I get my memory back? That is a question of mechanics. The deeper, heavier question is it finally safe to know? Your nervous system is waiting for an answer you cannot yet provide. It demands a guarantee of safety that the present moment rarely offers. So you sit with the static. You listen to the low hum of the mechanism that has run for decades. You recognize that the blank spaces in your mind are not where you failed. They are where you survived. And you are left wondering, in the quiet of your own head, what it would actually cost to ask the guard to stand down, and whether you are truly ready to meet the person who has been waiting behind the wall.